So this is 3.18 fermentation. We've got some wine glasses and some grapes. There's some nice foreshadowing for you. All right, so this is going to be me reading the lesson. Um, so some of you have said that that is helping you, and some of you are probably ignoring it. And, you do what you do. As long as you're reading the material and getting it into your brain, we're having a test this week, so hope you're ready. How is wine made? You probably realize that grapes are needed to make wine. You might not realize, however, that yeast are also central in the process of making wine. Yeast take the sugars from the grapes and convert them into alcohol through the process of fermentation. Fermentation. Sometimes cells need to obtain energy from sugar, but there's no oxygen present to complete cellular respiration. In this situation, cellular respiration can be anaerobic, occurring in the absence of oxygen. In this process called fermentation, only the first step of respiration, glycolysis, occurs, producing 2 ATP. No additional ATP is produced. Therefore, the organism only obtains the 2 ATP molecules per glucose molecule from glycolysis, compared to the 36 to 38 ATP produced during aerobic conditions. Anaerobic respiration is not very efficient process. Fermentation follows the first step of cellular respiration to continue and produce some ATP, even without oxygen. Yeast, single-celled eukaryotic organisms, perform alcoholic fermentation in the presence of oxygen. The products of alcoholic fermentation are ethyl alcohol, or drinking alcohol, the carbon dioxide gas. This process is used to make common food and drinks. For example, alcoholic fermentation is used to bake bread. The carbon dioxide bubbles allow the bread to rise and become fluffy. Meanwhile, the alcohol evaporates. In winemaking, the sugars of grapes are fermented to produce wine. The sugars are the starting materials for glycolysis. Animals and some bacteria and fungi carry out lactic acid fermentation. Lactic acid is a waste product of this process. Our muscles perform lactic acid fermentation during strenuous exercise, since oxygen cannot be delivered to the muscles quickly enough. The buildup of lactic acid is believed to make your muscles sore after exercise. Bacteria that produce lactic acid are used to make cheese and yogurt. The lactic acid causes the proteins in milk to thicken. Lactic acid also causes tooth decay because bacteria use the sugars in your mouth for energy. Pictured below are some products of fermentation. Products of fermentation include cheese, lactic acid fermentation, and wine, alcoholic fermentation. Gut fermentation. Behind every fart is an army of gut bacteria undergoing some crazy biochemistry. These bacteria break down the remains of digested food through fermentation, creating gas in the process. Learn what these bacteria have in common with beer brewing at the website. Summary. Fermentation happens in the absence of oxygen. Only the 2 ATP from glycolysis are produced under anaerobic conditions. Alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation are the 2 types of fermentation. And then your review questions. What is the difference between alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation? What is the difference between alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation? Number 2, if an organism could make ATP from sugars with or without the presence of oxygen, which would be preferred and why? All right, so I'll see you in the next lesson.